Some people enter a room and demand to be noticed. You were never one of them. You slipped into spaces quietly, the way light moves through glass, present, but never loud about it. You took the same seat, every class. Third row, second from the left, close enough to hear everything. Far enough that no one felt the need to look at you. You kept your notes neat. And your expressions neutral, and your heart behind something thick, enough that most people never even knew there was something worth reaching for, on the other side. Most people didn't notice you. Most people. There were 3 rules every student in the literature department learned before they stepped inside Professor Jungkook's classroom. First, do not be late. Second, do not submit anything past the deadline. Not even by a minute. Third, and most importantly, do not, under any circumstances, develop feelings for Professor Jeon. Rule 3 was unspoken. It lived in the knowing looks exchanged between students in the hallway, in the nervous laughter that followed whenever someone called him unfairly attractive under their breath. Nobody said it out loud. But you understood it, the way you understood most dangerous things, quietly, and only after it was already too late. Your POV. The first day of semester, you'd arrived 7 minutes early. Not because you were eager. You'd simply learned, somewhere, between the person you used to be and the person you'd had to become, that arriving early meant choosing your own seat. Choosing your own seat meant controlling at least one small thing in a world that had taught you, repeatedly, and without apology, that most things were beyond your control. Third row. Second from the left. You'd sat down, opened your notebook, and waited. He walked in at exactly the start of class. Not a second early, not a second late, like he'd calculated the entrance to make a point without making a spectacle of it. Dark hair, sharp jaw, the kind of quiet authority that didn't need volume to fill a room. He set his notes on the desk, looked at the assembled graduate students, with an expression that suggested he found the whole affair mildly inconvenient, and said, "I don't do extensions. I don't do extra credit. And I don't do favorites. If that's a problem, the drop period ends Friday." The girl beside you leaned over and whispered, "He's so mean." But she was smiling when she said it, the way people smile at things they find beautiful and terrible in equal measure. You didn't smile. You just wrote it down. No extensions. No extra credit. No favorites. You understood that language. You'd grown up inside it, in a house where love came with conditions, where the people who were supposed to stay had left, where the ones you trusted with the soft parts of yourself had used them carelessly, and walked away without looking back. You'd learned early that fairness without warmth was still the most honest thing a person could offer you. So, you didn't find Professor Jeon mean. You found him legible. And legible, in your experience, was the closest thing to safe. 10 weeks passed. You showed up. You sat in the same seat. You did the readings, all of them, including the supplementary ones, that most students skimmed or skipped entirely. You wrote essays that said what you actually thought, which was more than you could say for most other areas of your life. You did not raise your hand often. This was a deliberate choice. You had learned, through a series of small and significant betrayals, that visibility invited opinions, and opinions from the wrong people could hollow you out, in ways that took a long time to fill back in. So, you listened. You absorbed. You existed in the classroom the way you existed in most places, present, quiet, and entirely underestimated. Until Thursday's seminar. Until Wolf. The discussion had been moving along predictably, the usual voices filling the room, the usual interpretations cycling through, and you'd been sitting with something building quietly in your chest. A disagreement. You turned it over for 20 minutes, examined it from different angles, let it sit, and when you were certain it was worth saying, you said it. I think that reading is reductive. The room went still. You kept your voice even. The passage isn't about absence. It's about the way we mythologize the people we lose, how we rebuild them in memory, into something cleaner than they ever were. Wolf isn't being tender. She's being precise about a very painful human habit. Silence. Then Professor Jeon said, elaborate. Not you are wrong. Not interesting point. Just elaborate. Like he needed to hear more before he made up his mind, and the fact that he hadn't dismissed you immediately was enough to keep your voice steady as you did. When you finished, the room was still quiet. Professor Jeon looked at you for a long moment, the kind of look that felt like something being turned over and examined carefully, and then he moved the discussion forward, without confirming or denying anything. You told yourself it didn't matter. You were used to not being confirmed. That night, sitting alone in your apartment, with your essay half finished, and the city quiet outside your window, you let yourself feel it for exactly 5 minutes. The small, shameful wish that someone had just said yes, you are right, well done. The ache of wanting to be seen by someone who wouldn't use the seeing against you later. Especially seen by him. 5 minutes. Then you closed it, the way you closed everything, and went back to work. Professor Jeon's POV. He had a note on his phone titled Lecture Thoughts that had started, in September, as a place to record ideas for syllabus revisions. By November it was mostly about her. He noticed her on the first day, which was nothing unusual. Jungkook noticed all his students. He made a point of it. He'd learned early that the quality of a classroom depended on whether the person at the front was actually paying attention to the people in it, and he took that seriously. But he noticed her differently. She arrived early. Chose the third row, not the front, where students sat to be seen, and not the back, where students sat to disappear. The third row was the seat of someone who had thought about it. She opened her notebook before class began. She didn't talk to the people around her, not from rudeness, but from a kind of self-contained composure that seemed too settled for someone her age. She looked like someone who had already survived something. He recognized that quality because he understood it academically, had read enough literature about it, taught enough texts that circled it, but mostly because he'd seen it in people who would had to build themselves back up without anyone watching. There was a specific kind of stillness that came from that. Like they'd learned not to move too fast, in case something broke again. He didn't write about her that first day. He was a professional, and she was his student, and there was nothing to write. By October, he'd written, third row, second left, cited 3 secondary sources in today's essay that weren't on the reading list. Found them herself. Why does that feel important? He deleted it immediately. By November, he'd stopped deleting things. Today, the Thursday seminar, the Wolf session, he'd felt it the moment she decided to speak. There was a shift in the room's atmosphere, subtle, the way air pressure changes before weather arrives. He'd been watching her for 10 weeks, and he knew the difference between her listening and her preparing to say something, knew it by the slight change in how she held her pen, the way her eyes moved, from the page to the middle distance. When she said reductive, something in his chest did something he chose not to examine. Her argument was better than his interpretation. It was genuinely, objectively better, more layered, more emotionally precise, and delivered in a voice so level you'd have thought she was discussing the weather, if not for the exactness of every word she chose. He said elaborate. Because he needed to hear it again. That was the honest reason, which he also chose not to examine. When she finished, the room was quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when someone has just said the truest thing in the space. He moved the discussion forward. He did not tell her she was right, because he had 12 other students in that room, and he didn't do favorites, not even when one of them had just dismantled his reading of Virginia Woolf, with the quiet precision of someone who had clearly felt that passage from the inside. After class he walked back to his office, sat down at his desk, and before he'd made a conscious decision to do so, opened his phone. She argued back today, he typed. First time all semester. Said my reading of the passage was reductive, used that exact word. I don't know whether to be annoyed or. He stopped. He read it back. He knew what the end of that sentence was. He'd known it the moment she'd looked at him with those steady, careful eyes and said what she actually thought without flinching. He knew it, and it was absolutely not something he was going to write in a note on his phone, or say out loud, or even think too clearly. He sent it to his own number. Like he always did. A thought contained, filed away, something to untangle later or never. He pressed send. Checked his messages. And felt his entire cardiovascular system do something deeply unprofessional. The number staring back at him from the sent log was not his own. Your POV. Your phone buzzed against your notebook. An unsaved number. A long string of digits you didn't recognize. You almost ignored it. You'd learn to be careful with unknown things, unknown people, unknown kindnesses, anything that arrived without a clear explanation of what it wanted from you. But something made you tap it open. Unknown number. She argued back today. First time all semester. Said my reading of the passage was reductive, used that exact word. I don't know whether to be annoyed or. The world went very quiet. You read it twice. 3 times. You read it the way you'd read the Wolf passage that morning, carefully, looking for the thing underneath the thing. She argued back. My reading. I don't know whether to be annoyed or. You looked up slowly from your phone. Professor Jeon's writing was still visible at the whiteboard. Today's topic, still written across the board in clean, deliberate lines. You remember the exact same word, reductive, you've spoken today. Your phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Ignore that. Wrong number. A pause. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Unknown number. Please. Something happened in your chest. Something quiet and unwanted and embarrassingly hopeful, which was exactly the kind of feeling you had spent 2 years learning not to have. Hope was expensive. Hope required a kind of trust you'd tried to afford before and found you couldn't pay back the debt when it collapsed. You turned your phone face down on your notebook. You stared at the whiteboard. Then moved to the next lecture. You did not hear the rest of the lectures pending for the day. You were too busy not thinking about what came after annoyed or. That night, your apartment was quiet in the way that got loud if you let it. You'd made tea you weren't drinking. Your essay was open on your laptop. The unsaved number sat in your messages like an unexploded thing. You weren't going to reply. You'd decided that on the walk home and held it through dinner and into the evening. Replying was a door you'd learned to be careful with. You'd opened doors for people before, held them wide, even, and they'd walked through and kept walking and not looked back. You were tired of doors. You picked up your phone. For what it's worth, you started typing, then deleted it. You really sent that to a random number. Deleted. I stand by reductive. You stopped. Your hands were doing something slightly embarrassing. Because the truth was, and you were honest with yourself, always, even when it cost something, the truth was that you'd thought about the way he said elaborate for the rest of the day. Not because it was praise. Because it wasn't. Because he just needed more, had just leaned forward figuratively, and said keep going without making it about you, without performing interest, without anything that could be taken back later, and reinterpreted as something less. He was fair. He was consistent. He held his own standards without apology, and extended them to everyone equally, and you knew that probably said something concerning about the bar you'd set. That simple consistency felt like safety, but you were tired of pretending you didn't notice the things you noticed. You sent, for what it's worth, I stand by, reductive. Then you put the phone across the room, and pulled your knees to your chest, and sat there while your heart did something it had no business doing. No reply came that night. You hadn't expected one. Or rather, you'd told yourself you hadn't expected one, which was a different thing entirely, but you were very good at the telling yourself. Professor Jeon's POV. He didn't sleep well. This was not, he told himself, because of the text. It was end of semester. He had papers to grade. He had a department meeting on Friday that he was already irritated about. He was tired. He read her reply at 11:43 p.m. For what it's worth, I stand by, reductive. He put his phone down. Picked it up. Put it down again. She was right. She knew she was right, and she knew that he knew she was right, and she'd said it anyway, not to win something, not to be difficult, just because it was true, and she was apparently someone who said true things even when the room wasn't ready for them. He thought about the seminar. The way the class had gone quiet. The way she hadn't looked around afterward to gauge the reaction, hadn't sought validation from the faces around her. She'd made her argument, then she'd returned her gaze to her notebook. Like the point was the idea, not the applause. He'd spent 10 weeks noticing her. He knew that was not ideal. He also knew, with the same honesty he demanded in academic work, that there was a difference between noticing and doing, that he could acknowledge what he noticed, without making it into something it shouldn't be. He was her professor. She was his student. The space between those two things was not a technicality. He typed, "Don't be late on Friday." He meant the essay deadline. She was never late. She had not been late once in 10 weeks, and he knew that, and she would know that he knew that, and maybe that was too much. Maybe that crossed the line of what was appropriate to convey. He sent it anyway. Then he set his phone down, lay in the dark, and thought about the word or, and everything he wasn't going to do with it. Your POV? Thursday's seminar arrived, the way dreaded and anticipated things always do, too fast. You dressed the same as always. You'd arrived at the same time. You took your seat, third row, second from the left, and you told yourself, firmly and with great conviction, that nothing was different. Professor Jeon was already there when you walked in. He was speaking to a student near the door, his notes held loosely in one hand, and he looked up when you entered. Automatic, the way he always tracked movement. But this time, for exactly 1 second, something crossed his face. You didn't know what. It was there, and gone before you could name it. Then he was looking back at his notes, and you were walking to your seat, and the room was filling around you, and everything was perfectly, professionally normal. Except he didn't call on you. Not once in 60 minutes. Every other student called on, challenged, redirected. You, nothing? His gaze passed over the third row, like it had learned to skip a step. Like avoiding you was something he decided on, and was executing very deliberately. You told yourself it didn't bother you. It bothered you. Not because you needed to be called on. You'd learn to exist without being noticed. But this was different. This was being deliberately unnoticed, which was somehow worse, because it meant you'd been noticed first. When class ended, you were slow with your bag. The room emptied around you. Your chest felt tight in the way it did when you were trying to talk yourself out of feeling something before it could do damage. The wolf passage you referenced last week. You looked up. He was at the whiteboard. Erasing. Not looking at you. His voice was level and precise, the way it always was, the way you'd come to understand as its own kind of honesty. Your reading of it was the more defensible interpretation, he said. For the record. The chalk dust moved in the light. You looked at the back of his shoulders. At the careful, controlled set of them. Was that an apology? A pause. His hand slowed on the board. It was a correction. There's a difference. Right. You finished with your back. Your voice was very calm. You'd had a lot of practice at calm. So the text was sent in error. I know. You said. He turned around. He did it slowly, the way you made a decision you'd already fought against and lost. And you looked at him, this man who had stood in front of you for 10 weeks and been consistent and fair and never once made you feel like the ground might shift, and something in you that you kept very carefully locked did something involuntary. I'd appreciate it, Professor Jeon said, if it was forgotten. You looked at him for a moment. Long enough to be honest with yourself. Forgotten, he'd said. And you understood that word, you'd asked it of people too. Forget I said that. Forget I showed you that. Forget you know that about me. You'd asked it, and they'd said yes, and then they'd used it anyway, later, when the forgetting suited them less. But he wasn't them. You didn't know why you were so certain of that. Maybe it was the 10 weeks of consistency. Maybe it was the way he'd said please, in a text he never meant to send you. Maybe it was something quieter and less rational that you weren't ready to look at directly. The part where you accidentally sent a student your private thoughts, you said evenly. Something moved across his face. I didn't say. You said I don't know whether to be annoyed or, and then you stopped. The room was completely quiet. He looked at you. And you looked back at him. And something in that silence said more than either of you could afford to say out loud. I'll see you next week, he said finally. Quiet. Closed. You nodded. You picked up your bag. You walked to the door. You stopped. You don't know why. Maybe it was Wolf. Maybe it was the way he'd said please, and meant it. Maybe it was 2 years of swallowing every true thing, and the exhaustion of it sitting heavy in your chest. You said, without turning around. For what it's worth, I don't think you were going to say annoyed. You walked out before he could respond. The hallway swallowed you. The ordinary world resumed around you, other students, other voices, the sound of doors and footsteps, and the particular noise of a campus that didn't care about any one person's quiet devastation. You walked home alone, the way you did most things. Your phone buzzed 20 minutes later. Unknown, saved, unnamed, with a small star emoji you'd never admit to. Don't be late on Friday. You stood in the middle of the footpath. You read it twice. He knew you were never late. 10 weeks, not once. He knew that. The message wasn't about the deadline. You knew that too. You stood there while the evening moved around you, strangers passing, the city doing its indifferent thing, and you felt it bloom quietly in your chest. Terrifying and warm, and completely unwelcome. Not trust, you told yourself firmly. Not yet. Not ever, maybe. But something. Something you hadn't let yourself feel in a very long time. You started walking again. Eyes forward. Breathing even. The name you'd saved his number under was Don't. As in, don't. As in, you knew exactly what this was, and you weren't going to do it, and every step of the way home you were going to remind yourself of all the reasons why. You made it back to your apartment. You sat down on your bed. You looked at the message one more time. You were late on Friday for the first time all semester. Not by much. Just enough to see the way his eyes found you the moment you walked in, the brief unguarded second before his expression rearranged itself into professionalism. Just enough to know the answer to annoyed awe. She walked in late on purpose, and I will be rotating that in my mind for weeks. The way he found her immediately in a room full of people. The way neither of them said anything. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be completely, devastatingly understood. She's been let down by so many people. She's tired of hoping. But something about him feels different, and she hates that. She hates how much she doesn't hate it. Part 2 is going to break me to write. Like, share and subscribe for more such videos.